Hi, welcome everybody. I'm Catherine Fritz-Kalish. I'm one of the directors of the board of the International Centre for Democratic Partnerships, and it's my pleasure to interview Professor Ian Young today. Professor Ian Young has a distinguished career in education, including being Vice Chancellor of Swinburne University in Victoria and the Australian National University in Canberra. And his contributions to education and research in Australia have been recognised with numerous awards. Currently, he is on the directors of on the board of ICDP, and that's why we're speaking with Professor Young today to learn a little more about what goes on behind the scenes of ICDP to have it running smoothly for all of the participants and people involved in Pacific Connect. So, Professor Young, thank you for joining us today. I just have a few questions for you.
It's a pleasure, Catherine.
Thanks. So tell us a little bit about your involvement in Pacific Connect and how your experience in life and through work contributes to the way you're involved, and how is it relevant to the work that you do with Pacific Connect?
So Catherine, as you said in your introduction, I've really had a career which has been spent within universities largely. Both as a researcher myself, but also for many, many years as a senior administrator within universities. And one of the things, well, a couple of things really that I've learnt during that period of time were firstly the power of international education to be able to change lives, and in many cases to be able to change nations as well. So education is remarkably powerful at doing that. And the second one is the role that research can play, particularly for developing nations, in underpinning their economy and providing new opportunities for people. And I guess it's that sort of background that I bring to ICDP, to understand that, you know, really by collaboration between Australia and other Western nations in the Pacific, we've got great opportunities to be able to advance education, advance research in the Pacific, and through that, to really be able to transform the lives of many people.
Thank you. And what have you learned through the development of ICDP and Pacific Connect? How has this journey, changed you or influenced you?
Well, I must admit, when I came to ICDP, I had a good general knowledge, I guess, of the Pacific, but I'd never really spent huge amounts of time in the Pacific or understood it in great detail. So I've learned a lot. I've learned an awful lot about the Pacific and have a much greater appreciation of the strengths and also the challenges of this region. I have been most impressed by the warmth of the people, really quite remarkable when you get to meet people and understand what happens on a day-to-day basis. Their warmth and friendliness and welcoming has really been quite remarkable. I also understand now much more clearly what a great desire there is amongst those people to change their nations, to improve the life of not only themselves, but also all of the peoples of that region. It's really been quite remarkable how strong that's been. And I've also appreciated just how little things can make big differences, and particularly when you're dealing sort of in the startup industries. So what are, in the scheme of things, relatively small amounts of money? What could just be a few hours of mentoring or assistance or guidance or advice can change the whole direction of a young company which is starting up. And so, through these contributions, organisations like ICDP can really transform the trajectory of, I think, a whole range of these, new young startup enterprises that may exist.
Wonderful, thank you. And you've been on this journey for around 3 years now. And when you think about the future of ICDP and your aspirations for what it will be in a few years' time, how do you articulate that? What do you see as the future?
Well, on a negative to start with, unfortunately, I think the world's becoming more insular today than it has been for many years. That's simply a matter of, I think, of geopolitics at the present time. And what this means, I think, is that we as individuals can't change that, But we as individuals can actually ensure that we can reach out. We can actually develop the people-to-people relationships, which may be able to operate irrespective of what happens at the government levels. So I think it's important, or the role of ICDP is really important in developing those sorts of relationships, in encouraging people to continue to reach out. And I guess my vision for ICDP, if you said in 10 years' time, what was the one measure of success for ICDP? I think if we as an organisation in the Pacific were seen as the go-to spot for understanding cross-cultural issues between Australia or Western nations and the Pacific, if we were the people that everyone went to, say, ICDP, they know about this, they know how to actually bring people together across cultures, then we will have, I think, been successful in really, I think, delivering on our primary mission, which is to develop these sorts of links and to ensure that the Pacific is really connected, and importantly, that Australia is connected to some of its most important neighbours.
Thank you. Thanks, Ian. Really good insights. And I think the participants will learn a little bit more about you through this interview. But yeah, I agree. It's been a really interesting journey, only 3 years, and hopefully many, many years to come working together on building this amazing community. Thank you.
It is a remarkable community. And indeed, Catherine, it has been a wonderful journey so far, and I'm sure there's much more to come.